Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Audit webinar. We're going to let everybody settle in, and we'll begin with our presentation shortly.
It looks like Connie got in, but
Yes, she's here. Tara, can you make it where we can see Connie's video?
Okay, everybody, all set. Thank you so much for waiting. As I mentioned, this is the Introduction to the SVOG Audit Requirement webinar, so thank you so much for attending. We're really excited to get you this information for today. Before we begin, I am pleased to introduce Matt Stevens, Director of the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program.
Great, thanks, Tara. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, Shuttered Venue Operator Grantees. Thanks for bearing with us as we make sure we have all the accommodation support here. And I want to thank you for making the time to be with us today. So welcome again to our first session on SVOG audit requirements. Since we last spoke, our SVOG team has been working diligently to process our final supplemental and reconsideration awards. And we've realigned our team to be more forward-facing to you as grantees. If you received your final award amount and you've begun the finalized budget process, you should now be in contact with your SVOG grants management specialist. They are your primary point of contact, and we continue to empower our team to provide timely responses to your questions as federal grantees. So again, today, I'm really pleased that our team is offering the first of several types of technical assistance regarding audit requirements under the SVOG program. You're going to hear the full agenda from Tara Bartlick momentarily, but we want to make sure we give you a general overview of audits, how you respond to this requirement in our SVOG portal, the type of audits you can elect depending on the structure of your performing arts entity, and we're going to go deep today on the single audit requirement, which many of you will be required to undergo to meet the terms of the grant agreement and uniform guidance. We will also walk you through very briefly some upcoming audit events, so additional technical assistance. One will address the SVOG compliance supplement. We're really excited about that. It just got published yesterday by OMB, as well as a session that will cover additional options for our for-profit entities. So you've met me. You're in good hands again with Tara Bartlick, who's been a tried and true facilitator throughout SVOG. And we're pleased to introduce today Jennifer Crow, who is a senior audit manager who's provided awesome support already to SVOG. So with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Tara Bartlick to proceed with today's webinar. Go ahead, Tara.
Excellent. Good afternoon, grantees. My name is Tara Bartlick, and I will be going over the meeting logistics for today's presentation. This meeting is being recorded and is in listen-only mode, and we encourage you to ask questions during the presentation using the Q&A chat feature. Questions will be reviewed by staff, and we will cover them during the Q&A portions of our presentation. Any questions that do not pertain to SVOG audit requirements or questions that may be very specific to your particular grant should be sent to your grant management specialist. You can also email any questions to svogrant@sva.gov. On the agenda today, we'll have an overview of the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program audit requirements, and we'll focus in on information about the single audit process. We'll cover the respective responsibilities of both the grantee and the auditor within the auditing process, as well as discuss report submission process and the content of the reporting package. Finally, we'll highlight some helpful information and support and field any remaining questions as time permits. Before we move into content, we want to pause to confirm that everyone is in the right place. This webinar is intended for SVOG recipients that are required to complete an audit because they have or will spend $750,000 or more in federal funds in a given fiscal year. We will not have time during today's office hours to address questions outside the scope of this presentation, and we recommend that any questions related to application processing, cost compliance, or closeout are sent to your grant management specialist or to our general inbox at svogrant@sba.gov if a grant management specialist has not yet been assigned for your file. Today's webinar is the first in a series of 3 audit-related webinars, and we will focus on the single audit process. Non-federal entities, which include not-for-profit organizations that have had requirements for a single audit or for an audit, must either complete the single audit or a program-specific audit. For-profit entities with audit requirements may submit a single audit or a program-specific audit as covered in today's session. However, for-profits also have additional options to fulfill their audit requirements. We will briefly overview these alternate options today, and we'll be holding future office hours to go into more depth related to those options. If your entity is a for-profit, we recommend that you stay on the line today, as well as attend future sessions to understand which audit reporting option is best for you. Next month, we'll be having our second webinar in the series, which will go over the SVOG compliance supplement. And the final session is planned for July, and that will address specifics for for-profit entities. All grantees that are subject to audit reporting requirements should identify themselves as such through the audit action item in their grantee portal. We recommend that grantees start to engage an auditor as soon as they believe that they may expend $750,000 or more in federal funds in a given fiscal year. Audits are required for each fiscal year in which grantees meet the audit threshold. You'll have 9 months from the end of each audit period to complete and upload the audit report package. In the meantime, grantees should be on the lookout for the audit report action item in their SVOG portal. Grantees with SVOG awards of at least $500,000 will automatically receive this action item. Please note that if your grant award is less than $500,000 and you believe you may still expend over $750,000 in total federal funds in a given fiscal year, please contact your grant management specialist to request the audit report action item. This may be the case if you have received other federal funds in addition to SVOG funds. Finally, if you are submitting a single or program-specific audit, the report package must be uploaded to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse once complete. Packages must be uploaded within 30 days of receipt of the auditor's report or within 9 months of the end of the audit period, whichever comes first. Grantees with SVOG awards totaling $500,000 or more will automatically receive the audit report action item through their grantee portal, as seen in this slide. The top portion of the action item overviews audit requirements and outlines audit report options by entity type. The bottom portion of this action item asks grantees to confirm applicability of audit reporting for their entity. You will be prompted to select one of 3 options. The first option indicates that audit requirements are not applicable. Your entity has not and will not expend $750,000 or more in total federal funds in your most recent or current fiscal year. The second option indicates that audit requirements are applicable. However, your audit report package is not ready. The third option indicates that audit requirements are applicable and your audit report package is ready for submission. If you select the third option, you'll be prompted to upload your audit report package and any associated documentation. You'll be able to upload up to 10 separate documents by selecting the Upload Files button. If you need to upload more than 10 documents, you must upload the first batch of documents and then click Upload Files again to upload any additional documents. Once you click Next, you will be brought to the Attest and Submit page. The Attest and Submit page contains standard language attesting that the information uploaded is true and correct. Please note that this is the final step in the audit report action item. Once submitted, the action item will be completed and no longer accessible to edit. Please be sure to check that all intended documents are uploaded correctly before hitting Submit. For the next portion, we'll be going over the SVOG program audit requirements. And for that, I am happy to introduce Jennifer Crow.
Thank you, Tara. And good afternoon, grantees, and I guess good morning to those of you that are on the West Coast. As Matt and Tara mentioned, my name is Jennifer Crow, and I'm a senior manager in the audit and assurance practice at Williams Adley. Most of my career has been spent conducting various types of audits, including financial statement audits, single audits for federal government agencies, non-federal entities, for-profit companies. So I'm really excited to be here today and present you all with an introduction to the single audit. I know that for many of you, this is the first time that you have received federal awards and funding, so the various audit requirements can seem confusing and maybe even daunting. So hopefully after today's session, you will walk away with some clarity. My goal for today's event is twofold. First, I want to ensure that you understand the various requirements specific to the SVOG program and which audit requirements are applicable to you. One of those requirements that is available to you is the single audit, which providing an overview of the single audit is my second goal for today's event. I know that single audits can be extremely complex, and I could probably spend 2 days talking about the single audit in and of itself. So I will attempt to present the various requirements and how they are applicable to you and non-audit speak, if you will. This slide here is just to give you definitions of various acronyms and terms that I will use throughout today's presentation. If you see something and you're not sure of what it means, this information will be inserted into the chat box so you can refer to it at any point during this presentation. So before I provide a background on the single audit, I first want to explain 4 different types of audits and how they each relate to the SVOG program requirements. There were several questions related to various types of audits that were asked during SBA's April office hours, and hopefully these next 2 slides should answer some of those questions. So one audit that you may be familiar with is the financial statement audit. Whether or not you're subject to a standalone financial statement audit really has nothing to do with whether or not you received SVOG funds. Financial statement audits are performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, or GAS as the acronym, and not the uniform guidance. Many companies undergo financial statement audits as the objective of this type of audit is to determine whether or not the financial statements are free of material error and if the entity's internal controls as they relate to financial reporting are operating effectively. Now, the reason I included it on this slide is if you undergo a single audit, then a standalone financial audit is a component of that single audit. So to think about a single audit, I think it's best to think about it in the terms of 2 separate audits. During the single audit, the auditors are going to be performing a financial statement audit, but they're also going to be performing a compliance audit that is done specifically in accordance with the uniform guidance, also referred to as 2 CFR 200. Now, it's still one audit, and the work that the auditors do will likely be intertwined and performed simultaneously, but I've just found that when trying to conceptually understand the difference between the types of audits and the lingo out there, it's easiest to think about it from that context. Also, the scope of the single audit is going to include all federal awards that your company received during your fiscal year that is subject to audit. And by scope, I really mean what the single audit will cover. So what the auditors are going to look at during that audit. And if we go to the next slide, a program-specific audit. So this audit is essentially the same thing as a single audit, but there are three main differences that I do want to highlight. The first is going to be the scope. The program-specific audit only looks at one award. So in this case, it would be the SVOG award. The second difference is that a program-specific audit does not include a financial statement audit component. And the third difference is that the type of opinion that the auditors express is going to be different between the single audit and program-specific audit. During the program-specific audit, the auditors will issue a full opinion on the CIFA compared to the single audit where the auditors will issue an in relation to opinion on the CIFA. Again, this third difference doesn't really impact your responsibilities as the recipient subject to audit. It's just more of an FYI and explaining the differences between the single audit and program-specific audit. But other than those three differences, they're really the same because both a single audit and a program-specific audit are compliance audits conducted in accordance with the uniform guidance. Everything else that we discussed throughout the remainder of today's presentation that relates to single audits also relates to program-specific audits. So if I reference single audits, just know that it also applies to program-specific audits as well. And then the last audit option here is if you are a for-profit entity, the compliance examination is an audit option that is available only for you. For-profit entities can actually select from any of these four types of audits to fulfill the SVOG program audit requirements. The compliance examination, it's an engagement performed under AICPA's attestation standards. And during this type of engagement, the practitioner opines directly on compliance, and there is no requirement for financial statements to be prepared or a CIFA to be prepared. This option will likely be less burdensome for recipients that do not prepare financial statements, as again, it will not require those to be prepared or for a CIFA to be prepared. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this event, the SBA will be releasing technical guidance related to all of the different options available for our for-profit grantees, and then we will also be doing a technical assistance webinar focused specifically on the guidance for for-profit entities. And the one last thing before we move on that I want to point out on this slide is that I just want to highlight the terms GAGAS, which stands for Generally Accepted Government Auditing Standards, and then GAS. These are simply references to guidance or standards that audits must be conducted in accordance with. There's not necessarily a GAGAS audit or a GAS type of audit out there. So if you hear that lingo, if somebody says, oh, you need a GAGAS audit, that doesn't really exist. It's either going to be a financial statement audit, a single audit, or something like that. So those are just really the standards that the audits need to be conducted in accordance with. All right, so how do you know if you're subject to an audit, and which audit are you subject to? So the first question that you're going to need to ask yourself is, am I even subject to an audit? If you received federal awards from the SVOG program and expended greater than or equal to $750,000 in total federal awards in your fiscal year, then yes, you are subject to an audit for that fiscal year. And then the second question is, okay, so I've determined I'm subject to a single audit. What type of audit am I subject to? And you're going to fall into one of these three categories. First, if you are a non-federal entity, aka a recipient of federal funds, you received SVOG funds and you received other federal funds during the fiscal year, then you are required to have a single audit. if you are a non-federal entity and you only received SVOG funds, so no other federal funds were received, then you can elect to have either a single audit or a program-specific audit. Again, as the uniform guidance relates to both a single audit and the program-specific audit, they're both very similar. It's just the program-specific audit is going to be a little less burdensome than the single audit will be. And then the third category on the right side of the screen is for the for-profit entities that received SVOG funds. And again, you have the most options and you can elect to have a financial statement audit. You could choose to have the single audit. You could undergo a program-specific audit. Or lastly, you could elect to have the compliance supplement. All right, so we've talked through the various types of audits and how to determine which one you are subject to. Now the rest of the presentation, I will focus on the requirements of the single audit. We're going to dive right into an overview of the single audit by first providing some background on how the single audit even came to be. The guidance that really governs the single audit is going to be 1, the Single Audit Act Amendment of 1996, and then 2, the Uniform Guidance. The federal government passed the Single Audit Act of 1984 and later amended in 1996 to ensure organizations receiving federal grants complied with the federal government's requirement. The act refers to it as a single audit because it consolidates multiple individual audits for each federal award into a single audit to be conducted by an independent auditor. The act was enacted to streamline and improve the effectiveness of audits of non-federal entities, as well as to also reduce the audit burden. In December of 2014, the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, issued uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements, referred to as the Uniform Guidance, and that is the most recent OMB regulation issued to address the Single Audit Act. Now the Uniform Guidance contains all of the rules and requirements for federal funds, so it's basically the rule book for how to manage federal awards at the federal level. And for ease of future reference, these slides do contain hyperlinks that will take you directly to each of these pieces of guidance. Again, some more background just to help you understand the purpose of the single audit and why it is important. I've already touched on some of this information on the slide, but the single audit was created to promote sound financial management, promote uniform guidelines for audits, and also to deploy audit resources efficiently. The single audit ensures that an entity is using its federal funds correctly and is in compliance with all applicable compliance requirements and regulations. And then lastly, federal agencies can learn a significant amount from the single audit results. For example, these results provide critical insight into potential areas of non-compliance and how recipients are using the federal funds. So a single audit must be conducted by an independent third-party auditor. Whether or not audit expenses are considered an allowable grant expense is generally going to be specific to each federal award. So for the SVOG award, you are allowed to pay a reasonably proportionate share of the audit cost from your SVOG budget. The single audit can only cover 1 year. So if you meet the threshold in both, let's say, fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022, you cannot simply have a single audit that covers both years. You need to have 2 separate audits. So you'd have a single audit for fiscal year 2021, and you'd have a single audit for fiscal year 2022. Now, that's not to say that you can't use the same auditors for each of the audits. There just needs to be 2 separate audits conducted. And then lastly, I want to highlight that the length of the single audit can vary widely based on the size of the recipient and the federal funding composition. Obviously, if you've only received the SVOG award, it will likely take less time than it would if you received multiple federal awards, as the scope of the audit would be less. But again, this is not something that you want to save until 4 weeks before the due date to begin an audit. As a best practice, my recommendation would be, as soon as you know you're going to expend greater than or equal to $750,000 in your fiscal year, then at least start the process of trying to procure an auditor. Okay, so how do you know if you're required to have a single audit? Per the uniform guidance, a single audit is required when a non-federal entity expends $750,000 or more of federal funds during its fiscal year. Or stated another way is that if the aggregate amount of federal financial assistance that you spent during your fiscal year is $750,000 or greater, you are subject to single audit requirements. A few important items that I do want to point out is that if you received a Paycheck Protection Program loan, expenditures related to the PPP are not included in the calculation of the $750,000. Again, PPP expenditures should not be included in the calculation of the $750,000. The second that I want to spend a few minutes talking on is pre-award costs. So as a general rule of thumb, for expenditures to be reported on the CFA and included in your calculation of the $750,000 threshold, there should be an award for that period. However, because the SVOG allows for pre-award costs, there are likely situations in which expenditures occurred prior to the award issuance. So in this situation, when costs charged to the SVOG program are from the previous fiscal year to when the award was finalized, those pre-award costs should be included in the current year CFA and the calculation of the $750,000. I know this is kind of a complex topic to just verbally talk through, so I included a visual example of this on the slide. I apologize if it's a bit small, but just to walk through this one more time. So let's say you have a fiscal year end that ends June 30th, and you received your SVOG award in July of 2020, which would be your fiscal year 2021, the start of it. And you elected to apply the pre-award cost from April, May, and June of your fiscal year 2020 to the SVOG program. Those costs from April, May, and June of fiscal year 2020 would be considered an expenditure in fiscal year 2021, as that is the year in which the SVOG funds were awarded. As I stated on the last slide, a single audit is required if you are a non-federal entity. What does that mean? The uniform guidance defines a non-federal entity as one of the following institutions. So you're a state or local government, an Indian tribe, a nonprofit corporation, or an institute of higher education. So if you fall into one of these four categories, then you are considered to be a non-federal entity. A federal award. So a federal award, really at its most simple terms, is just whenever you receive federal funding from the federal government, and it's usually in the form of a grant or a loan. And part of the single audit threshold is whether or not you expended $750,000 or more. So I do want to spend a few minutes talking about what an expenditure is. In the simplest terms, an expenditure really just means that you are spending federal award money. The uniform guidance does allow for you to follow either cash or accrual-based accounting. The only rule is that it must be applied consistently. So my advice would be that if your financial statements are prepared using a cash basis of accounting, then apply the cash basis of accounting concept to expenditures And if you use accrual basis of accounting for your financial statements, which I'm assuming a lot of you do, then you would apply the accrual basis principles to the concept of expenditures. And one last thing to mention on this slide is whether or not an expenditure is allowable is ultimately going to be federal award specific. So the uniform guidance does provide general guidance around allowable costs, but each federal award will identify the specific allowable and unallowable costs. So you'll just want to make sure that you're extremely familiar with the terms, conditions, and any stipulations of each of the federal awards that you receive. On this slide, most of you are likely familiar with this, but I have included a link to the SVOG frequently asked questions document that does go into more detail and identifies allowable costs specific to the SVOG program. In addition, our second technical assistance webinar that we'll be doing in mid-June, June 9th, is going to go into much greater detail on the SVOG allowable cost. So stay tuned for that, especially if you have questions related to which costs are allowable and not allowable. All right, so I know there's been a number of questions around the timing and when does the single audit need to be completed by. So the single audit must be completed no later than 9 months after your fiscal year ends. So the fiscal year of your entity. For example, if you have a 12/31 fiscal year end and you are subject to the single audit requirements, meaning that you spent $750,000 or more during fiscal year 2021, then the audit would need to be completed no later than September 30th of this year. I do want to highlight that in March of 2021, I believe, the Office of Management and Budget issued a memo, memo M2120, that provided a 6-month extension to the single audit submission deadline for all recipients with federal fiscal years through June 30th, 2021. So that's the reason for the original deadline and extended deadline columns on this slide. For this, so if you have a June 30, 2021 fiscal year end, your original deadline was March. However, that has been extended to September 30, 2022. And then you can see that from a fiscal year end of September 30 going forward, the extension no longer applies, so it is back to the original 9 months. All right, this slide just highlights some of the many groups that are involved in a single audit and their roles. However, in the interest of time, because we do have a lot of content that I want to get through and leave some time for Q&As, I'm going to skip over this slide as it doesn't necessarily directly impact your responsibilities in a single audit, but it is here for future reference if you are interested. All right, so you've heard me use the phrase uniform guidance multiple times already throughout this presentation. So I just kind of wanted to provide a visual for everybody as to the various sections within the uniform guidance. So that's what you're seeing on this slide. When it comes to single audit requirements, I would say that subparts D as in David, E as in Edward, and F as in Frank are really going to be the most relevant for you as recipients. Subpart D as in David. So the purpose of this is really just to establish general rules and expectations for post-award requirements. It is not necessarily meant to be prescriptive, but rather provides for, at a minimum, what are the basic requirements for post-award process for things like internal control and the reporting process. Subpart E outlines the allowability and the proper treatment of costs on federally funded projects. It establishes general guidelines for the types and treatment of costs and activities in which the federal funds can be used for. It also identifies those charges that are typically not allowed to be charged to federally funded projects and are considered unallowable expenses. Again, the uniform guidance in subpart E, these are just broad guardrails that apply to all federal awards. So you'll still want to make sure that you refer to the terms and conditions of your specific federal award, so that way you know what costs are allowable and unallowable, because these are general guidelines that apply to everything, but your terms and conditions of the federal awards, I guess, trumps. If there's a difference between the two, it will trump what's in the uniform guidance. And subpart F of the uniform guidance is a large and extensive federal government guide created for use in auditing federal grant programs. It essentially serves as a streamlined oversight guidelines for conducting the single audit. So the auditors will rely very heavily on this section, as well as the compliance supplement when they're completing your single audit. And then lastly, there are various appendices that are part of the uniform guidance, with probably the most useful being the compliance supplement. And if we go to the next slide, I'll provide a high-level overview of the compliance supplement, which the compliance supplement affords agencies the opportunity to provide program-specific instructions on how the auditees or recipients should be evaluated. It's a massive document, probably close to 2,000 pages, as it contains the specific requirements for all federal awards across all federal agencies. So when you look at the compliance supplement, you will see a specific section that is related to SBA's SVOG program. And I took a look, and it is it's in part 4, and it's section 59 for ease of reference. And as Matt mentioned, hot off the press is the release of the 2022 compliance supplement, which was released yesterday. This slide presentation does have a link to it, but you can also just find it by Googling 2022 compliance supplement, and it should be the first thing that pops up. Again, we'll be doing a technical assistance webinar over the SVOG section of the 2022 compliance supplement. So for purposes of today's presentation, I'm not going to go into any greater detail. All right, so a quick recap. I know we've covered a lot of important information in this past section, so I do just want to take a minute to do a quick recap. If you have expended $750,000 or more of federal awards during your fiscal year, then you are subject to one of the following audit requirements, depending on which category you fall into. If you are not a for-profit entity and you receive federal awards from the SVOG program and at least one additional program, then you are required to have the single audit. And again, this is a full-fledged financial statement audit plus the compliance audit. If you are not a for-profit entity and you received federal awards only from the SVOG program, then you can elect to have a single audit or a program-specific audit. And then lastly, if you fall into the for-profit category, because the uniform guidance treats for-profit entities differently, then you can choose between any of the 4 types of audits listed here, which is the financial statement audit, single audit, program-specific audit, or a compliance examination.
Thanks, Jennifer, for that recap. Now I'd like to pause to go through a couple of the question and answers that we've received. But before I do that, I want to remind everyone on the line that this session is being recorded in case you have any audio or connection issues. Please try leaving the session and rejoining. If you're unable to stay for the remainder of the session, the recording and the slides will be available on sba.gov/SVOG, and that will be in your Manage Your SVOG Grant section. So please keep an eye out for those updates. And we'll also follow up with grantees to give a link to the recording and links to any of our upcoming webinars as those are scheduled. So as we mentioned before, we have the upcoming compliance supplement webinar in June, and then we'll be having another audit webinar in July for options for the for-profit entities. Okay, so a couple questions that we have. The first one, somebody's describing a scenario where they received their SVOG funds in mid-2021, but they mentioned that the eligible expenses under this program can date back as far as the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. So if they're using funds received in 2021 to cover expenses from 2020, are those considered expended in 2020 or 2021 as far as the single audit is concerned?
That's an excellent question, and the short answer is they are considered expended in fiscal year 2021. Just for, I guess, some context is, the single audit requirements only apply to the year in which the federal award is received. So if you didn't receive the SVOG award until 2020, then any expenses related to the SVOG award during the fiscal year prior to receipt of the award should be captured in the year in which the award was received.
Thank you so much. The next question is whether or not the audit includes all expenses for the year or just SVOG expenses.
So if the SVOG program was the only federal award that was received, then the audit would only include SVOG expenses. Now, if you received additional federal awards, then expenditures related to those federal awards would also be subject to single audit requirements.
And help grantees confirm if they have to complete an audit.
Okay, so you have to complete an audit if you expend $750,000 or more in federal funds. Again, this is across all federal funding sources, including the SVOG program within your fiscal year. So if you meet that requirement, then you will be required to complete a third-party audit, either a single audit or a program-specific audit. If you are not a for-profit entity, if you're a for-profit entity, then you have the option of the 4 different audits.
Okay, thank you so much. So for now, we're going to move on. I do see a lot of questions coming through, but for the sake of time, I want to make sure that we're able to cover all content. So I'll hand it back to Jennifer to talk about the auditee responsibilities.
Thank you, Tara. So once you've established that you meet the criteria for the single audit requirements, we now want to drill into what your specific responsibilities are as the auditee, and then also some things that you can expect from the auditors during the single audit. And I do want to take a moment to clarify. I realize I've been using the phrase auditee a lot. That's basically you. That's kind of auditor speak for whoever is being subject to the audit. So if I say auditee, that's referring to you as the recipient. So I would have to say that the heavy lift of your responsibilities does actually come prior to the single audit even starting. So if you remain compliant with all of the federal statutes and regulations and terms and conditions of your award, then I really think that that is the hardest part. The rest is just really allowing the auditors to come in and verify that you are in compliance with federal awards that you received and expended. You will want to make sure that you have internal controls in place over the federal awards that you received, and those internal controls should really help ensure compliance with the various requirements of the federal awards. So if we take a very basic example, if one individual within your entity is responsible for making purchases or procuring services using the federal awards, you'd want to make sure that a different person is responsible for reviewing and approving the purchase or the use of funds before it happens. this would, be a classic case of having proper segregation of duties in place. A very important point that I do want to highlight is that you'll want to make sure that any internal control procedures that you do have in place or that you are following, you'll want to make sure that those are documented. One of the most important things, if you can go, yeah. One of the most important things you can do is make sure that you have documentation for all federal award expenditures. You can never have enough documentation. Auditors love documentation. Depending on the type of expenditure, the supporting documentation will vary. But you can't just say, I made a $5,000 purchase of office supplies. Maybe it was copy paper, and that be acceptable. You would want to be able to show an invoice, maybe a receipt for that purchase, but then you're also likely going to need some sort of documentation that demonstrates what the purpose of the purchase was for. Was this purchase reasonable? Was it a necessary business expense? And sticking with the concept of documentation, you must keep employment records for 4 years, and the document supporting eligibility and compliance with the SVOG program for 3 years. You'll also want to make sure that you prepare your financial statements and your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or SEFA, as you'll commonly hear it referred to as, before the audit begins. These are probably some of the first documents that the auditor is going to ask for at the onset of the audit. And later on in the presentation, I will touch a bit more on the SEFA. You'll also need to hire an independent auditor to conduct the single audit. If you've never hired an external auditor before, some great things to consider when looking for an auditor include the demonstration of qualifications and the availability of their staff and making sure they have appropriate technical abilities. So really making sure that the audit firm and the auditors working on your audit have experience, preferably in conducting single audits or program-specific audits. They can be rather complex audits and topics, so the more experience an audit firm has, the more efficient the audit process should be for both them and for you as the auditee. You can also look at the results of external peer reviews of any potential audit firm. This is kind of a report card, if you will, that assesses whether the audit firm has completed past engagements in accordance with all applicable standards. The peer review, you can always request a copy directly from the audit organization itself as part of your process in determining if you want to hire that firm or not. Next slide, please. All right, so during the single audit, once it's started, you will participate in the entrance and exit conferences with the auditor. The entrance conference will be conducted at the beginning of the audit, and this is where the auditor will really explain all of the important things you need to know about what to expect. Common topics discussed during this include scope of the audit, timing of the audit, expectations for both you as the auditee and the auditor, and you'll also kind of nail down the various logistics of the audit and what it looks like. The exit conference will occur at the end of the audit and essentially just serves as a wrap-up or conclusion meeting in which all of the results are formally communicated. During the audit, you'll be responsible for providing the auditor with access to staff, accounting records, supporting documentation, grant records, really any and all documentation or information that the auditor requests. And I do want to stress the importance of maintaining communication with the auditor throughout the process. Communication is a two-way street between you and the auditor. And I've just found in my experience that if both parties are openly communicating, it does make for a much smoother and pleasant, I guess as pleasant as audits can be, audit process. The bulk of the audit process will consist of the auditor reviewing the documentation that you provide to them and completing their various testing procedures. If during the testing, the auditor does identify any exceptions or any findings, then you will be responsible for preparing a corrective action plan for each finding identified. And one of the last things that you'll do during the single audit is prepare the required reporting package documents. And again, I have an entire section towards the end of this presentation on what those required documents are that need to be included in the reporting package. So I'll touch more on that when we get to that section. Once you complete and submit the audit reporting package with the auditor, then that essentially signifies the end of the single audit. Really, the main thing after the single audit is if there are any findings identified, then after the conclusion of the single audit, you will be responsible for implementing whatever corrective action plans your organization has developed to prevent that issue from occurring in the future. All right, so the next few slides are going to focus on the auditor responsibilities. Again, if you've done your due diligence and hired an auditor that has experience in conducting single audits, the auditor will be extremely familiar with their responsibilities. So really the purpose of this section is just to provide you with a bit of insight into what the auditors are going to do, just so you have a little bit more of an idea of what to expect during the audit. At the highest level, the auditors are going to audit the financial statements to determine whether they are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. This is just your typical financial statement audit and everything that it entails. Again, if you are electing and you have the option to do the program-specific audit, the financial statement audit is not a component of the program-specific audit. It is only a component of the single audit. The auditors are also going to review your CFA to determine that it is fairly stated in all material respects. Basically, that means that they're going to look at it to make sure that it is complete and it is accurate. They'll make sure that it includes all of the required elements for the uniform guidance, which does include a listing of all of the federal awards and all of the, or I guess the total expenditures for all of those awards. In order to determine whether the financial statements and CFA are fairly stated, the auditor is going to review your internal control policies and procedures and have discussions with various personnel within your organization to gain an understanding of those internal controls and how they operate. They are also going to use the SVOG section of the compliance supplement, as well as the general federal guidelines provided in subpart F of the uniform guidance to determine whether you have complied with all federal statutes, regulations, and terms and conditions of the federal awards that you received. So at a minimum, you can expect the auditors to select a sample of your federal award expenditures and then again request documentation to support the amount, the timing, the type of expenditure. All right. If this is your first time that you're being subject to a single audit, then the first bullet on this slide will not be applicable to you. However, if you've had single audits in the past, then as part of the audit process, the auditor will follow up on any findings issued in the previous years to determine if management implemented the corrective action plans that were developed. And then they will also determine and conclude whether or not that finding still remains. Again, if this is your first time being subject to a single audit, then that will not occur during this audit. And after the completion of all of the audit testing, The auditor will communicate with you regarding any findings identified during the audit, if there are any. Generally, this is not something that is just communicated to you as a surprise at the end of the audit. Kind of going back to that constant communication concept between you and the auditor, you really should be made aware of any findings during the testing phase. As soon as the auditor identifies them, they should really be engaging you in conversation and discussion around the findings to make sure that they have a full understanding of the issue at hand and can make an accurate conclusion. In the event that there are findings, the auditor will request that you prepare corrective action plans for each finding, and the auditor will then review those corrective action plans with you to ensure that they adequately address the underlying issue that caused the finding to occur. And again, in the next section, we'll go into more detail on the various reporting package documents. But for now, just know that it really is a joint effort between you and the auditor and completing the reporting package. It's comprised of documents from both you and the auditor, so it needs to be done together. One of the final steps in the audit is for the auditor to issue the audit reports. While the uniform guidance provides specific elements and what the auditor must include in their report, the uniform guidance also provides the auditors with a bit of flexibility when it comes to the form of their report. So you may receive one audit report, or there may be separate audit reports. Either way, the auditors will know what they're doing. So what they provide to you is what you can accept as final. The 5 sub-bullets on this slide identify the elements that must be included within the final audit report. Again, this is regardless of whether it's one report or separate reports. The audits must issue an opinion or a disclaimer of an opinion on whether the financial statements and CFA are fairly stated in all material respects. The auditors must also issue a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance and other generally accepted government auditing standards. And they also must issue a report on compliance and internal controls for the SVOG program. And then lastly, the report will include a schedule summarizing the findings and question costs, if there are any identified during the audit. All right, so these next few slides, I've really just tried to, visually present to you the concept of a single audit by really breaking it down into 4 main phases. It is slightly repetitive of the previous slides related to the auditor responsibilities, but I just wanted to explain the single audit to you, in 4 different phases. So they do go in order from beginning to end, as you see on the slide deck, but the financial statement audit component does occur simultaneously during the selecting major programs and testing phase. But again, I just broke out the financial statement audit as a standalone piece, just because when you think about it, it is its own beast. It is its own audit, so it's easier just to think about it as one component. And if we go to the next slide, the second phase, again, this is happening at the same time the auditors are looking at the financial statements, and at the beginning of the single audit is where the auditor will review your CFA to determine which federal awards you received during your fiscal year. If you received multiple federal awards during your fiscal year, the auditor will likely not test every single one of your federal awards. Instead, they will select a sample of federal awards to test using a risk-based approach. Primarily, it's a combination of criteria in the uniform guidance, the compliance supplement, as well as auditor judgment. There's a whole technical process that I could explain to you about their sample selection approach, but the auditors will, again, that's their responsibility. Really, your only responsibility related to this is just to provide them with an accurate and complete CFA at the beginning of the audit. And then if they have any questions related to that CFA, answer those questions. One thing to point out about the SVOG award is that if you've only received the SVOG award, then this phase will not occur during the audit because there's only one federal program to test. So there's no sample selection or risk assessments that need to be conducted. So this phase will only occur if you're having a single audit and you received multiple federal awards during your fiscal year. All right. The test of internal controls and compliance is where the auditor is going to conduct all of the testing. I would say that this phase is really the bulk of the audit. This is where the auditor will conduct discussions with management and other personnel to obtain an understanding of your internal controls and various processes around ensuring compliance with the federal awards. This is also where the auditor, again, will select a sample of expenditures and request documentation from you. Next slide, please. And the final stage of the single audit is going to be the reporting phase. Essentially, this is the wrap-up phase. So this is, again, where you'll attend the exit conference with the auditor. You'll prepare the corrective action plans for each finding identified, and you'll prep all of your documents that need to be included as part of the reporting package. During this phase, the auditor will also prepare and issue their final audit reports. And I think, go ahead, Tara.
Thank you so much. Sorry, a little slow on the unmute, but we do have a few more questions from the audience that we can cover. So the first one is folks who have not gone through the auditing process are asking how they can connect with an auditor.
Absolutely. So again, just to reiterate, if you are subject to the single audit requirements and are required to have a single audit or program specific audit, this is not something that is conducted by the SBA. You do have to hire a third-party auditor to complete this. If you worked with an audit firm in the past, you can start with them to see if they have any experience conducting single audits or program specific audits. Otherwise, you could even just do a simple search for audit firms in your area, just to get a list of folks to contact, to reach out to. But again, when you're talking to different audit firms, you really want to make sure that you're hiring a qualified firm. So you want to get an understanding of the types of audits that the firm has experience in conducting. Even if it's not a single audit or program specific audit, I would think at a minimum, you want them to have experience in conducting audits related to federal agencies or the federal government. So just, I guess my best advice is look for different audit firms in your area and then really get an understanding of what their level of expertise is related to single audits and program specific audits and go from there.
Excellent, thank you. And I know some of these questions are a bit repetitive. They were submitted previously, so it does touch on the content that you touched on. But the next question is, what documentation will be required for the audit?
Okay, so some of the documentation that will be required, again, is going to vary by audit depending on the nature of the federal program, the type of expenditures you have. So unfortunately, we can't, just publish a list to say, all right, if you have these 50 documents, you're going to be in good shape. But some of the common requests that you can definitely expect is, again, your completed CFA or schedule of expenditures of federal awards, your financial statements, documented policies and procedures that your company has related to the internal controls you have in place to ensure compliance with the federal awards. If you've used any of the federal awards or SVOG funds to cover payroll costs, then likely the auditors will request timesheets or documentation evidencing an employee's compensation amount. When the auditors select a sample of expenditures, they're going to request documentation. And again, this is where it can vary a bit. But examples of some of the documentation that you would likely provide would include, invoices, maybe contracts, operating agreements, receipts. I really think it's best if you think about, I had this expenditure. What is the auditor looking to do when they what are they trying to achieve when they request documentation from us? And really, what the auditor is going to be looking for is whatever documentation you can provide them that demonstrates, that it was an allowable cost. So whatever that expenditure was, it was allowable, that it was made within the period of performance. So just having that, I think, understanding of what they're looking for hopefully helps you gauge what type of documentation to provide to them. Something that demonstrates if you have a $5,000 cost, that actual cost was $5,000, and that cost was made within the correct period of performance allowed for by your federal award. So hopefully that provides some guidance and clarity.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. And then folks are looking forward to, once the audit has been completed, what are possible results grantees might have?
Okay, so at a very basic level, the audit is going to either result in findings or there will be no findings. Even if you have findings, you can still receive an unmodified or a clean opinion. It really just all kind of depends on the nature, type, extent of the findings that are identified throughout the audit. Again, that is something that you should be in constant communication with your auditors about if any findings are identified during the audit. I did mention in one of the slides, that the audit is always going to result in a report. Again, it can be a combined report, so just one audit report that touches on all the requirements, or it can be multiple reports, normally two, that include the auditor's conclusion. The auditor is going to provide an opinion as to whether the financial statements of the auditee are presented fairly and in accordance with GAAP. The auditor will decide whether the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or SEFA, is fairly stated in relation to the auditee's financial statements. The auditor will issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance. Compliance related to financial reporting. They'll also issue a report on compliance related to each of the federal programs that they test during the audit.
Okay, great. And that actually segues pretty well into our next section, which covers the report submission process. So I'll let you go ahead with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, so once the auditors issue the final audit reports, there's one last thing that has to be done before you are completely done with a single audit requirement, which I will refer to that process as the report submission process. You can think of it in the following 4 stages. So first, you'll want to gather all the documents required as part of the reporting package. Next, you'll upload the documents and complete the electronic form SFFAC, or data collection form, or DCF, as you'll hear it commonly referred to as. And those documents will be submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. So if we go on to the next slide, please. All right, so as you can see here, the final audit report package is comprised of various documents, some of which are prepared by you as the auditee, and then also some of the documents are prepared by the auditor. So again, it really is a joint effort. At a minimum, the documents identified on this slide are required as part of the reporting package. The auditee is responsible for preparing your financial statements, your CFA. If you were subject to a single audit in the prior year and you receive findings, then you would be responsible for preparing a summary schedule of the prior year audit findings. Again, if this is your single audit, if this is your first single audit, then that schedule is not applicable to you and will not be included in the package. And if during the single audit findings are identified, then you will be required to prepare corrective action plans for each finding identified. Now, the auditor is responsible, again, for issuing the audit reports, and they're also responsible for preparing a schedule of findings and question costs if they are identified during the audit. And then information from all of these documents flows into the form SF-SAC, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that both the auditee and auditor are responsible for completing. And thinking about the form SF-SAC, it's really just a master summary schedule of all of the single audit results. So, it gathers general information on you as the auditee, on the auditor, audit information from your financial statements, information about the federal program compliance, the audit results. It is an electronic form that's kind of built into the FAC, so you will complete it electronically within the FAC website. And again, it does require you and the auditor to make various certifications and assert to different things as you complete that form. All right, there is a lot on this slide, so I apologize for that. But the final step is going to be uploading the reporting package documents to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and then submitting the electronic form SF-SAC. This submission, again, must happen within the earlier of 30 calendar days after receipt of the final audit report, or 9 months after the end of your fiscal year. So if we apply this timing, I guess, to a quick example, so you have 9 months after the end of your fiscal year to complete your single audit. But let's say you completed your single audit and received the single audit reports from the auditor 4 months after your fiscal year end. Because that single audit was completed earlier than the 9-month deadline, you then have 30 days to submit the package to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. After the completion of your single audit, you are required to upload the reporting package documents to the FAC again and complete the SF-SAC. A few things that I want to highlight about the FAC is that the single audit results, once they are uploaded, are made available to the public. So just keep that in mind. Two, the FAC only accepts single audit results from non-federal entities. So if you are a for-profit entity and you elect to have a single audit or a program-specific audit, do not upload your results to the FAC. And also the Federal Audit Clearinghouse website, it does contain quite a few useful resources. So I would encourage you to check those out when you get to kind of the reporting phase of your single audit. I've included some links here to some of the different templates that they have available. I know they have a corrective action plan template available, which again is one of those required documents for your reporting package if findings are identified during the audit. Also on this slide is a link to their FAQ document, which provides quite a bit of instruction on the submission process and really kind of walks you through step by step what you need to do. And then the last thing before we move on that I want to highlight is Tara spoke to this a little bit at the beginning of the event, but a specific SVOG program requirement which is in addition to submitting your reporting package documents and Form SAC to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. You must also submit that same package to the SBA, and you will do that via the form of a reporting action item. So non-federal entities out there, submit your reporting package to both SBA and the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Any for-profit entities that elect, any for-profit entities, all you're going to do, regardless of which audit you select, is submit your documents to the SBA. And finally, don't forget about the record retention requirements, which is that you must keep one copy of your Form SFSAC and the reporting package on file for 3 years from the date of submission to the FAC and the SBA. Okay, so I do want to take a few minutes to just briefly explain what each of these various documents are that comprise the reporting package. So if we go to the next slide, okay. Again, for each of these documents, once the slide deck is published, I have included the specific section of the uniform guidance and the hyperlink to that section. It does provide pretty detailed, I would say easy to follow instructions for each of these documents. So I would definitely encourage you all, when you get to the point of having to complete these, to take a look at the instruction provided in the uniform guidance. But first we have the financial statements. Most of you are probably familiar with these, so I'm not going to spend any time explaining what they are, other than just to reiterate, it's your responsibility to prepare them, and this is one document that the auditors will request towards the beginning of the audit. The next, again, is the CFA. This is also a key document, and one of the first documents the auditor will request. If this is your first time undergoing a single audit, you likely aren't familiar with this document, but in its simplest terms, it provides a picture of all federal awards for which your organization expended funds during its fiscal year. The expenditures for each of the federal financial assistance programs are presented on the CFA based on the same accounting basis as presented in your financial statements. Again, the uniform guidance establishes the various required elements and disclosures for the CFA. They have I wouldn't say it's a short list of required elements in section 200.510B. So again, I would encourage you all, when you go to start filling out your CFA, to take a look at that guidance as you complete the CFA. At a minimum, the CFA must list, again, all federal programs and the total expenditures related to each of those programs on the CFA. You must also identify the assistance listing number for each of the federal awards that are on the CFA. Each program is going to have its own listing number. For SVOG, that listing number is 59.075. You're also required to include footnotes in the CFA. 2 potential footnotes. One would be a footnote describing any significant accounting policies that you used in preparing the schedule. And 2, if you used indirect cost rates, you must include information on those indirect cost rates used. I do want to highlight that the SBA is working on developing a CFA practice aid that should be made available in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. I think that will help out a lot of you listening in today's event and preparing your CFA. Okay, the summary schedule of prior audit findings must report the status of all findings included in the prior audit schedule of findings and question costs. if there are any findings in which you believe that they have been fully corrected, then in the summary schedule, you would only need to list the audit finding and state that corrective action was taken. If there are still findings that have not been corrected or have only been partially corrected, then the summary schedule must describe the reason for the findings recurrence and what your planned corrective action is going forward. Again, this document is not applicable to you if either this is your first single audit or if you've had a single audit in the past, but there were no audit findings identified, then it would not be applicable to you either. And the corrective action plan, again, in the event that any findings are identified by the auditors during the single audit, the auditee must prepare a corrective action plan. It should address each finding and it must provide the following information: name of the contact person or persons that are responsible for the corrective action, the actual corrective action plan, and then the anticipated completion date. In the event that the auditor identifies a finding and you do not agree with the audit finding or believe that corrective action is not required, then you still must do a corrective action plan, but it must include an explanation and specific reasons for the disagreement. And if we go to the next slide. Okay, so these two documents are prepared by the auditor. All you really need to be familiar with is that they are required parts of the reporting package. So you'll just need to make sure that you do have these documents from the auditor in order to submit the reporting package to the FAC and SBA.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we'll take another break to go through some lingering questions that we've received in the chat. So the first question is for a grantee, where should they submit the audit once completed?
Once the audit has been completed, again, if you are not a for-profit entity, then you should submit the audit and reporting package to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and also to the SBA via the audit reporting action item. If you are a for-profit entity, then you would submit the audit and related documents only to the SBA.
Thank you. And when is the audit required to be submitted?
Okay, so you have 9 months from the end of your fiscal year to have the audit completed and all required documentation submitted. But again, if your audit is completed sooner than that 9-month deadline, then you must submit your reporting package and audit results within 30 days of receiving your final audit report.
And how will the SBA, how will they be using the audit?
So the SBA will review the audit results and the documentation that you submit just to ensure compliance. They are required as a federal awarding agency to monitor compliance with the federal program and to ensure that grantees are in compliance with all of the terms and conditions of the award. So they will mainly just be looking at the results, making sure that you know, all the terms and conditions you are in compliance with. And if they do have any questions, there is the potential for them to reach out if they have follow-up questions, but that's really the extent of what SBA will do with those audit results.
Okay, great. So we are butting up against the end of our session for today. So I just want to review some additional information and support that will be helpful for the grantees on the line. As we mentioned, today's webinar was the first in a 3-part audit webinar series, and the next session is scheduled for June 9th, and that's going to cover additional information on the recently published compliance supplement. Our July webinar has not been scheduled yet, but that will be in July, and that will be for audit requirements for for-profit entities. So do keep your eyes out for emails from us. We do our monthly updates, and links to those sessions will be included in those updates once available. On the left here, we have some helpful resources highlighted. These links should be available in the chat. And next week, we're going to be publishing the slide deck from today's presentation containing all of the links. I know there was a lot of information covered here, so we definitely are eager to get that in your hands. And the recording of today's session will also be available. So I do want to point out this second bullet on the right here. That is the link to the compliance supplement that was published today. We're very excited to have that. And if you haven't already, if you suspect that you will have the audit requirement and you haven't reached out to an auditor yet, please do so. They should be able to help walk you through a lot of these processes. If you have been in touch with your grant management specialist, they're also a great resource. And as always, we have the general SVO grant at sba.gov inbox. So I won't take up any more of your time. Thanks so much for joining us today. We will be meeting again in a few weeks' time, June 9th, for our next webinar. We hope everyone has a great time in the meantime. Thank you so much.